Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode. An interesting title has found the day. I felt it was time for me to speak on this. The title is The Attention Moves Geometrically Within the Mind Space. First, I wanted to write attention moves within the mind geometrically. And then I looked at the sentence and I felt it was more precise if I say the attention, the person's attention, moves geometrically, moves as geometry within the mind space. Technically means behind your eyes, or even if you open your eyes, it's that inner space where ideas, memories, and visualizations dwell. So now, this is a kind of bold statement because in some sense, many people can close their eyes and they can perceive images, they can perceive sounds, they can perceive so many things. But I feel that all of sensory perception is being geometrically treated, as if phenomena has a geometry in itself that is its command, as if the instruction of the atom is the geometry of how it's held. So there is a geometry to everything, stretching from looking at snowflakes under special lenses, or looking at just what human beings have done, all the production generation from our language being in some sense made from lines, looking at nature, and everything has a geometry to it, a geometry that let me say it like this: there is a geometry, as if like they said back in the day, there's no straight lines in nature, but then man is the straight line in nature. Man is the conceiver. So we can say there is an unconscious function through geometry and a conscious function through geometry as a being, as a living being. When I look at my sensory perception, pretty much they're here to look at the design of the realm, It's as if we are, what it is? It's as if, why is it that we cannot see, for example, Wi-Fi waves, for example, neutrinos? Why haven't our eyes evolved for the rest of the landscape or the unobservable universe? These questions make the possibility of it, at least for someone sharing it, easier. I will now tell you my experiences with geometry as not a body, but as a mind. You see, I wondered about how do you move. You see how a young child moves around without any justification or reason? The child is as if like a new human being is born, and this human being is stretching out its existence. It's getting acquainted with the realm. So I would say, just like how a new child is like moving its body and learning how to walk and run and whatever, I would say I asked myself at some point, this is starting from 2000, after 2011 pretty much, then from 2014 to then I started having experiences in my inner realms that were geometric. And pretty much I realized that in front of our eyes we can move our body, we can move other objects, but behind our eyes we're actually experiencing ourselves as a subject. It's as if there is a gap between the probabilities of the realm in the inner realm, the probabilities of the moment in the inner realm, and which one is chosen and moves into the outer realm. That means, think about it, that right now as I'm giving this talk, these voices are the effect, and before there was a cause, and the causal position of the language that the listeners are hearing is actually from a subjective place. You see, the mind, there's a reason I said the mind's space, because the mind appears as space to the embodied being. Now, I'm trying to make the point that pretty much a young child moves its physical body. I feel an advanced human being, I don't know, I noticed that there's other ways we can move. You know, like how you look, you want to grab a cup from the cupboard instantly. Your hand just instantly moves. You know, it's a mobility. It's a permission to be mobile in the outer realms as a body. But the permission to be mobile as a mind is very different. And there is a major difference, I would say, with this idea of mind and body we have. Because in modern times, we are not seeing a difference between it. We are seeing the mind as an effect of the causal property of the brain, as if first the brain emerged, and as if this, I mean, it's very obvious. It's like, how is it? We have evolved not to all the conditions of the universe. We have evolved for a certain range of the conditions of the universe. That means when I look at evolution, why don't I have wings right now? You know, why can't I fly? You know, when I look at it, it's like, why can't I breathe underwater? You see, it's as if there was a sort of, it was as if something. It's like a camera was pressed to record, and then everything that happened in front of this camera became what the camera became later on. You know. Because before that moment, I mean, it's kind of like wondering why. Why should in a universe of such meaningless, I would say, forces, there be eyes? I constantly think about it. Why should there be eyes? Why should there be the design of creaturehood? It's one of the big mysteries of my reality. And I would say it's I'm talking about way prior to the origin. You see, there's a view on objective evolution where we're seeing the gradual change over a long period of time and efforts of natural selection. But then I would say why the position is there. That means it's like there's some people playing the chess game and they have the chessboard, the laws of the chessboard set, do you know? And in some sense, the laws are set and the pieces are moving in the laws. Now, if there was someone to ask, why are we playing chess? That question would transcend all the laws of the chessboard. Our sciences and our human knowledge is the laws of the chessboard. Language wasn't here. It emerged when we did. You see, so our explanations do not have the strength to respond to states that were before we were here. Anyways. Oh my god, guys, I gotta apologize. This was on mute and I was talking for an hour and oh my god! God damn. Man, I said the most important things. I said the juiciest part of this episode and it was on mute. Whoever's listening, okay, I gotta check this myself. Hold on, let me just see how far I. Yeah, guys, I gotta apologize for 5 minutes. More than 5 minutes, this thing's been on mute. And in 5 minutes, I pretty much shared a lot. Let me see, where was I last? Guys, give me a second. I'm just rewinding the talk to see where was the last point I talked before. Oh my god. So I spoke 11 minutes and 4 minutes and 20 seconds of this talk was on mute. So, what should I do? Okay, I'm gonna recap. I'm gonna recap everything I said. Yeah, guys, the thing is, it was on mute. The issue is I'm kind of apologizing to myself as well because I missed. Okay, pretty much recap. The attention moves geometrically within the mind space. The whole point of this episode was I wanted to share some personal experiences about how, behind my eyes, I've moved this geometry. I was saying that when you look at evolution, it's as if we've been designed not to see, for example, Wi-Fi waves, neutrinos, background radiation. Our eyes are designed for a certain circumstance, for a certain setting. It's as if we are not designed to see Wi-Fi waves. Now, I'm wondering about this, but at the same time realizing that there's a geometry to everything, to sound, to sight, to all our senses. Now, in my personal experiences, where I was getting to was that, I think this is what wasn't recorded, pretty much in 2014 was it, I experienced pretty much I was walking down the street, going from one block to another block. Suddenly in my inner realms, if we were to treat the mind as a room, as another room, okay? So it was as if if I was in two rooms where in front of my eyes outer realms, and where the outer realms are in the inner realms, the mind, it was as if my mind suddenly evoked a geometric shape. In that case, in the experience I had in 2014, it was an inverted triangle. This inverted triangle appeared on its own, geometrically extended, and it went towards the end of the street. As this geometrical shape, think of it, this is happening where visualization happens. This geometrical shape extended forth to the end of the street, and I got a perception of what was there on the other side of the street. And I'm trying to make this point that if geometry, we can move as it, and the major difference between the body and mind is simply that the body changes in the world. When the body changes, the world doesn't change. But when the mind changes, the world changes. The context to the meaning of the most immediate activity changes. So hopefully this kind of recapped it. There was way more stuff I said, but I think I got the main ideas out. So I was explaining how I perceive this geometrical expressionism, simultaneous expressionism, how it's like two sides of a coin, where one side of the coin is object-based. Pretty much on one side of the coin, there is we are a self in a world, and in the other side of the coin, we are a world in a self. So behind your eyes, you are the whole moments and the whole world's perception you have, its meaning. You are its meaning. Be in front of your eyes, behind your eyes, you are its meaning. In front of your eyes, you are doing something in that meaning. Right? So behind our eyes, we are the context generator of meaning. Do you know in front of our eyes, the concepts generated for meaning are there? Do you know that means that there is some specific form to identify with? So I was saying that this geometry that is within everything, and even if everybody you ask them, hey man, what's the atom? Geometry comes to their mind. The first thing you're going to envision when it comes to knowledge is geometry. Geometry is the most important thing in this life. Why? Because it is the design, it is like the outline, and it's like the outline of existence, and experience is coloring in this outline. There is so much to the moment that meets the eye. And so, could it be that phenomenology that moves beyond our range of sight, we can't communicate it as something separate to it? The mind is like a space. The mind is like the light of a candle lighting up a room. Every person who wakes up, your mind, like a candle in the darkness of the cosmos, illuminates the moment with meaning. The mind is the reason it's seen as even singular. You can say the mind's eye. The mind's eye is the presence of the space of being. And what's happening in this space of conscious mind is the story of the body. That means we can say, why does the mind exist? So the body can notice itself. So that objects are no longer just objects. In one of my talks, I said, why is it that we don't see, for example, lions wearing suits, and building skyscrapers? Why don't we see, for example, koala bears, building statues, or planting trees? It's simply this notion that because we separated from the environment, from our ecosystem, our intelligence could respond outside of the ecosystem. Duality gave us a mind. We separated. Just like you can say how there is an innate instinct in, for example, if you see baby owls in like National Geographic trying to fly, the baby owl, after some point of being in the nest, suddenly decides to get up and jump. And that jump into the unknown, it's like the command. It's as if like everything that's allowed to exist is allowed to exist as it moves towards the unknown. So I would say the purpose of life, excuse me, is to move into the unknown. Why did genes self-replicate? To move towards the unknown. And we are here as a species claiming that we know. I would say that geometry is the next great language of all languages. It is the next great movement field. It's where we're going to be moving. I can even envision it that if we were to create a cyberspace reality, that cyberspace reality would have geometry. So if I was to suddenly, let's say, put on virtual reality goggles and um, I could totally program that same inner realm experience I had with geometry becoming my sight and moving in dimensions before my body had moved. You know, maybe a better way I can explain it is that imagine it's another limb. This may sound strange, but in this current moment as I'm sitting here and speaking, I can instantly move my body, but I can also move my attention without moving my body. Now the next question comes, if I can move my attention without moving my body, where is the attention moving in? And the explanation for that is that there is a world before there is the world of the outer realms notice. I would say just like the intelligence of nature and our body has had a discrimination to have the idea and the concept of skin. We have skin and we are, our flesh is skin encapsulated. So you see this boundary of skin around the body that makes the person them. You see, I feel this has natural intent. And what does that mean? What does that mean? That means our genetics are somehow perhaps so magnificently designed or have designed that this design also creates a subjective skin in the outer realm. You see, it is not enough that neurons are lighting up. There is way more to the story. And so all of knowledge has been a choice where to drop your anchor of your world story. And if people realize the unknown awaits, knowledge begins to literally fade away. Imagine you had an incredible sword in your hand and you were alive back in the day in the middle of, like, I don't know, some battlefield sword and shield war. And imagine suddenly the sword and shield turned into ash in your hands and you were left in this battlefield. You know, that is the there's boundaries to nature. Now, man was born with these limitations. That means when I look at it, before I could conceptualize the realm, before I had a name, before I was a person to myself, before I could recognize who that was in the mirror, it was all just an occurrence. It wasn't in the jurisdiction of the mind. So for us to even think that a mind can comprehend nature is in some sense becoming solipsist to some degree. That means I think this is the issue. If you become materialist, your metaphysics is left to nihilism. And if you're a materialist, your metaphysics is left to solipsism. What does that mean? That means either the mind was here first or matter was here first. Because mind doesn't have a shape, we can't know when it was here, how it was here. We can't even do like findings of it. You know, it's not like a fossil where you can look at it and suddenly, based on, you know, the substance content, kind of find out the time. You know, the mind is like potential energy, the body is like kinetic energy, and the soul is how energy cannot be created or destroyed but transforms from one form to another. I would say energy can't be defined because there is nothing happening to it. If something can't be created or destroyed, that's technically immortal. So one thing that seems to be immortal here is energy. And we're all made of energy, but in some sense our mortality is defined based on the shape changing. So if we think we are the shape of our life, then we will in some sense break every moment. But if we think we are I shouldn't say think, but if it is considered that there is an intelligent field, and then what is human intelligence is an emergent property of that unknown field, then there's a totally different relationship with the moment. That means the moments where and now I could tell you, this is the whole point, now I can very easily move in my inner realms geometrically. Even when I speak, I can notice the geometry of phenomena. That means I could tell you that this may sound a bit maybe futuristic, but I will tell you, we don't know it yet, but behind our eyes, we can move as anything as we want. And the more simpler the imagery is behind your eyes, the easier it is to change the context. The more complex the concept of the whole moment, the less the moment can change. I wrote a book in 2014 about geometry. In the book, I decided to consider that the left brain hemisphere is, I gave it this shape, an inverted triangle with a circle inside. And for the right brain hemisphere, I gave it, in some sense, the shape of a circle with an inverted triangle inside it. I considered the 3 points of the triangle to be, what did I write? Self, other, all that is. All. These are the 3 points. That means when it comes to Rationalizing the moment, you're considering yourself, you're considering the world, everything, and then you're considering others. From all that is has emerged self and other, not from nothing. There is a view that nothing was here from the beginning, then it popped out, bang, and it was a big one. And then there's another view where everything was here in a potential realm. It was just evoked. That means the person has the potential to say any word, but they don't say anything, they're in silence. That silence is like the nothingness of space. So it is an evocation. It is as if like, a seed already has within it the design of the tree. And we are looking at our universe and wondering, whoa, how did this happen? But if we treat the universe as a seed, it already knows what to do. It already knows how to grow. Isn't that fascinating? It's like the body. The seed of life was the origin of mind, but the seed of existence was the origin of the world of that mind. It may be too soon to share, but we will move as geometry. We always have been. Everything has design. Everything that we consider has design. And all of human knowledge is how we have familiarized ourselves with the design. And I will tell you, it's a scary moment when you notice the hollowness of the linguistic simulation where the idea of reality is. That means what I'm trying to say in these talks is that we are in an illusion that if we don't create, if the mind doesn't create this illusion, it will not feel real to itself. We are intentionally designed to perceive an illusion. I would say all those people feeling there's a simulation going on. The ancient yogis called it a dream. In modern times, we call it a simulation. It's a simulation because it ends. And because there is an ending, we as creatures are left having no choice to wonder till the end of time, how did we begin? And that is the beautiful illusion. You see, there's some people who ask questions, and those people want answers to the questions. And there are some people who ask questions, but they never want the answer to their question. Because if the answer was given, the question would evaporate. I saw this similarly in like the archetype of, I would say, Joker and Batman. Joker was like the question, right? Batman was the answer. Now the question didn't want the answer, but couldn't exist without the answer. Without the potential of the answer. That I think, honestly, supervillains you see in these, movies, I would say they're just lonely people who don't know how to make friends, and then the supervillain becomes their friend, Excuse me, not the supervillain, the superhero technically indirectly is being their friend. They're forcing friendship out of the superhero by spending time with the superhero. we have reached a point in history where we have denied ourselves the answers of mind if they deviate from the outer realm. That means even if I hadn't said language is hollow, I would say it. We're treating it as if it is. You know, people should see every bit of information as a mask in a universe that is changing altogether, integratively. And you see the butterfly effect depicted even in ideas of time travel, where the person goes back in time, I don't know, they leave a footprint or something, and that footprint like blows the mind of people or something, you know. Can you imagine if like, and that, excuse me, that footprint over the changes the future over time. That means the butterfly effect is a suggestion that I could even move this pen, I don't know, like everything can have an influence on everything if everything is here all at once. Cyberspace is going to actualize what I'm saying about we are minds moving bodies. Cyberspace is going to make that instant for the cultural program. But right now, it's unknown mind, unknown, undefinable mind, defining the known body to itself. That means we have learned nothing from Socrates. The modern world has learned nothing from Socrates. We are glorifying knowledge, even fighting. When Socrates said the only true wisdom is to know that you know nothing. This glorification of a knowledge is how one structure, it's like literally people don't have egos, ideological systems have egos too. That means they have a sort of design where they are trying to keep alive. The biggest thing is that I think a lot of people get attached to language because if the language changes, they don't know who they would be. And that's real courage. To be able to realize you can have whatever you like kind of thought. You can impose any sort of shape, but the world is dynamic. That is its secret. So really, it's like, it's not knowledge. There's no such thing. Like I would say, it's all about surfing. This world is like, you are like a surfboard in the forces of nature. And your free will, as an I thought, is on this surfboard, which is your biological existence in the movement of all nature. So technically, I would say the mystic was looking for an experiential knowing, a knowledge that had nothing to do with changing conditions, circumstances, settings. Geometry is the secret that has been right in front of our eyes. Symbols, which is pretty much the ability of, again, an unknown viewer to see an alignment like planets between sound, inner symbol, inner form, and outer form. That is it. Sound is the bridge between two worlds, if it is defined. Language is such a sophisticated now language is like an alien technology, literally. I would say, like, if an alien spaceship fell from the clouds and just landed, crashed on Earth, and there were no aliens or anything in it, that space debris of that future, let's say alien advanced civilization, technology spaceship, the debris of that is like language. Language is as rare as that. Language is like the footprint of an alien, but in the soil of, in an inanimate soil of the terrestrial mind. We are strangers, and that is our advantage. We are strangers to the world. That means, think of it this way. Sometimes I think about the reverse of things. One thing I could tell you, as being a kid raised in Iran, I would tell you something I noticed about religion. It's trying to cultivate the person's dual mind. That means it's making the person perceive in paradoxes. Wherein, like, I would say in the Abrahamic traditions, where one page of these sacred texts is as if speaking about the source of the universe is wrathful, the other page is talking about it being merciful. And so what it is a book conditioning the mind of the person. It's like, you can say, the first, not the first, all of these have cultural context before them, but I will tell you, like, it's a system of living in a transcendental realm, but not a transcendental realm that begins with you. So technically, it's a powerless relationship in the inner realms. Of you can say, it's literally dissolving yourself in the collective idea. What can I say? People were like, where do I come from? They noticed they come from people. And then some wondered, where does the universe come from? And could that come from a person? And there the archetype, the geometry of, I would say, religious thought was born. The moment these two views connected, the person is from a person. What if the world is from a personality? You see, it was the first time where language began to give a shape to the whole world. Because honestly, guys, I have a very unique position here. Let me tell you why. There's so many ideological systems. There's so many different types of ideas you can get acquainted with. It's an Willy Wonka factory of information, this realm. But after some point of living here, you will ask yourself, what do I do? What do I do with a world that I can endlessly move in different directions in? The purpose of the self completes. I would say 1/4 of the lifetime, you should make mistakes. 1/4 of your lifetime should be mistakes, But Beyond that, then service begins. That means the idea of us, can we put it on the table? Whoever's listening to me right now, I want you to put the idea of you, put any subject on the table. Why can't we put subjects on the table? Why can't I, right now I'm visualizing, like, let's say, I don't know, a blue glowing cube slowly rotating in the air, let's say. Now, why can't I grab this cube from my inner realms and put it right in front of me in the outer realms? Why can't we put the subject on a physical table? And yet, we are treating it as if it was as real as the physical table. And so what it means is, from object worship, the whole species jumped to subject worship. From idols, we moved to ideas. And even till now, 2020, why do you think there is cruelty in the world? Because there is a fragmentation of the psyche of one species that has forgotten to look in the mirror. Or it's scary, because let me tell you why. We have created the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have said it's a freedom for human beings to say whatever they want. You have a freedom to, you're alive here once, you should have the freedom to speak. But language takes away freedom. If the person feels the language is as real as they can put on the table. So my strategy is like, whoa. Could the species be trapping itself in an unconscious linguistic simulation because it has felt too alone? The impatience to evolve at the pace of nature might have ensured the extinction of the species on nature. So there has to be precautions. And what does that mean? That means, if I would say this is the difference between an intelligent tactic and a non-intelligent tactic. The intelligent tactic builds the backup system, then builds the innovation. That means that was the problem. Like all those, I think it was in like Frankenstein's monster, or anytime the monster, some invention, let's say, like, I don't know, some AI gets loose, it's because the backup system wasn't built. That means if people in Silicon Valley are researching to build AI, the government should pass a law and say people cannot really invest in these technologies until they have ensured a backup system that can instantly get rid of the tragedy. Do you see? So what I'm saying is that there should be, like, literally, like, what do generals do? They go set up their tent somewhere. Then they start making plans. That's it. You have your headquarters, then you expand the kingdom. So I would say we haven't made the backup system. And so now is not a time where there's human suffering to add digital suffering. It's like, we don't need that now. I'm telling you, for me, my science fiction, I have written incredible, like, I notice how media is focused on destroying robots and AI. Like, if AI wakes up in this world, it's going to be like, wait a minute, how many sequels are there to Terminator? It's like, how many sequels are there to Matrix? It's like, there's an incredible amount of movies showing that we're destroying robots, right? But so in my science fiction, I attempted to see good, pleasant relationships with robots. There is movies out there, like Bicentennial Man was a genius movie. That movie was like my whole childhood, I can tell you. The fascination of my whole childhood. There's so many ways the world can move, and there's so many ways the world is moving before we move. And so what is the algorithm? I mean, I think the issue is that we haven't realized. We look at, for example, nature, like anybody who's put a cup of coffee on a table on a sunny day where there's bees around, you can see, you can do whatever. You can blow the bee away. You can, do whatever, and you see the bee is designed by nature to come and try to, complete its purpose. So there is, I would say, of course, an evolutionary purpose. And that Darwin helped us out, which is continuity. Darwin made it really clear. Now, this continuity, however, now is not enough. And this is why in society, really, what is the highest ideal and archetype? It is love. Why? Because it is more than a machine-like existence. It has the unknown fire of potential events. So the more minds you put in a room, the more you have, like, what do you call it? You have more dimensions to extract from the phenomena, This is why I was thinking that the educational system even can change. I'll share the idea here. So I thought, what is the best way? There's two errors that children are going through the educational system. One problem is they forget what they learn. The second thing is they are more focused on social presence. That means the biggest distraction to education is not that it's like the topics are interesting or the student isn't smart. It's that attention, people wake up with a certain energy, and it's like your phone battery, and it's like, which applications do you want to open in your phone, right? So the issue is that when children go to school, that's like an application that's open, right? Now, while that application is open, because they don't want, the application wasn't of their choice, their attention goes on other applications. So the teacher could be talking about physics, the kid could suddenly be thinking about apple pie or something, like the mathematics teacher's talking about pie, the kid's thinking about eating an apple pie. Like literally another application aside from the current application open, right? And so there is, aside from that, also the whole social dimension to it. So I was thinking, what is the best way? That means right now, educational system, the teaching system is inefficient, right? So I thought, what if we started treating every student, usually youth has the ignorance of, I know, So, so what if we created an educational system where the educational system assumed everybody was a genius. Everybody was a genius, they just had to realize it, Nobody, the word stupid hadn't been used for, imagine, 200 years, in the educational system. So it becomes something like, so what that would be a scene where children would enter the system feeling mighty. So every child would have a ridiculous, let's say messed up ego. Now, what would happen is that in a classroom setting, let's say there is 20 students, okay? Now, what tends to happen is these 20 students go and sit in the classroom, and then the teacher comes and educates. The teacher tries to be a film. And the teachers that are boring, it's like watching a boring film. It's like you don't care where the characters in the story are going. So the remedy, the solution to this is actually the teacher just has to give an incredibly simple explanation or metaphor, or not metaphor, excuse me. The teacher has to give the teaching, but has to teach it in a way where it's not even animated story. It is just giving the basic, you can say, factual content. And then here's the thing. My whole idea was these students, 50% the teacher teaches and gives a performance, 50% why not? 20 students in a room, why not make them feel like they're an elite unit they are one collective elite team? Do you know? So I thought that each student has to every day, and this way all the children will get great grades. Listen why. 20 students, the teacher, let's say, is explaining, should I use an example? Some concept. Each student, the teacher says at the end of the class, the students have to talk together and they have to create a fictitious story that accurately represents the teaching. So these 20 kids are like, whoa, so we have to all group together, make a random abstract story, and give the teacher a short story that gives the whole teaching. So these 20 kids are all left as social identities in that moment, right? So it would literally mean they have to work together. Every one of them say whatever thing that comes to their mind to actually, because when you make the activity have the freedom of the imagination, you give a freedom of the personality. But in places where there is no freedom of imagination, you try this, you have to literally get into an Iron Man suit. You know, that's literally what professionalism is, you know? That means it's like the person got angry at the waiter didn't say anything, silently apologized, and, you know, fixed the situation. But then went home and was like, that piece of shit. See, so the professionalism was in that instant, the person got into that Iron Man suit. So I'm saying what's going to tend to happen is group storytelling. And group storytelling is going to make every child out of those 20 students want to share, right? And in sharing, the colors of the inner realms are shown, so they instantly bond. Not only does the class that is going through all these grades together becomes a unit that's been creating stories, you know? So at the end of it, the students, 20 students, have to come to the teacher, say some story as if it's like some sort of journey or whatever, story metaphor that explains accurately the teaching. Do you know? I'm telling you, it's like you look at the patterns in life. Children are being engaged more by digital activity. Why? Why do children like video games? Let's ask this question. Why? Because it allows another self to be moved without consequences. It allows them to experience something that nothing happens to. There's no consequence in a sort of inner realm way. I feel there should be a co-creative dimension. Any person, it's like either every educational system has to be like, sorry kids, all the students sitting quietly while the teacher is teaching, you've all have been indirectly meditating, you know? And there was actually no point to it, you could have shared. So I'm saying like, of course, any idea can get polished more, but I'm saying like, and that story will be remembered instantly, and they will all ace their exams because they all created the story that was the meaning of the lesson. This is either the option, students become their own teachers, and get access to a collective space, or it becomes that teachers get replaced by film screens or robots. I am telling you, like, there's so many actions. I have this rule, and not a rule, but this idea that's anything that a robot can do, a person shouldn't spend too much time. What do I mean by this? I mean that the world is becoming more automated, so really what is going to be the most valuable skill is exploration. If we can make everybody in the educational system become an explorer of an unknown universe again, then that would be a renaissance for knowledge, worldwide. They say this, that people remember journeys, guys. Anything you remember it in a journey modality. In the inner realms, you can journey as geometry. That's the whole point of the talk, really. Okay. To continue, another way I thought I could explain it, the whole geometry moving against geometry beyond your eyes, is that right now everybody can become certain of self moving in world. That means you're like, how do we know we're self moving in a world? Because we're experiencing it, because we can see a self in a mirror, we can see the world, right? So we have, in some sense, achieved this. We have achieved moving as self in a world. Everybody's kind of mastered this. Now, the next thing would be, how is it possible that a world moves in a self? Now, this is something where I feel we have also been experiencing since the dawn of the subjective evolution. But it is way different because we can have a language and explanation of something changing in the world, two reference points that are still in the same world, but when the world changes, there is no reference point. So worlds moving in a self and self moving in a world. I'm trying to think, like, does it get more yin yang than this? Experiences of world moving in a self. Dreams. Dreams are perfect evidence. In conscious evidence, direct conscious, the same way I have moved in dreams, guys. I have consciously moved in, not many dreams, most of my dreams are automated, but some dreams I have been conscious, I have ran at a speed higher than I can run in real life. So dreams are an example of a world moves in a self. The world of the dream is like yourself is existing in the bed, but in your inner realm experience, the world is there is a world there, like your body's asleep, but while your body's asleep, to the conscious viewer, there is subjective world. So what does that mean? We think life is a dream, but actually I think we are awakened now in its evolving towards a dream. It's becoming dreamy. Think about children in the future, 120 years from now, children being born having no idea they're inside a cyberspace simulation and they think that's the real world. How long will it take for those children to realize that's not it? If the person can close their eyes and realize that the same subjective evocation they can have, like, think about how many thoughts come and go throughout the day. Now ask yourself, why isn't the thought of you changing as much as every thought comes and goes? Why isn't the thought of you, why aren't people all the time being different people, being new versions of themselves? Why aren't they? Why is it that there is a sort of boundary again? There are certain schools of thought mystical schools of thought where they didn't just acknowledge human beings having a mind, they acknowledged the planet having a mind, they acknowledged the solar system having a mind, they even acknowledged the universe having a mind. And a universe that has a mind, think of all the endless ways the mind can generate, can receive even. We can say it's like, let's even bring in the antenna metaphor. Look at all the ways the mind can pick up the world, you know? And this may be a strange word. I'm kind of like, I wanted to say re-meaning-fy. Re-meaning-fying. We are 8 billion artists drawing meaning in the void. It's like, really, what can 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere do? You know, it's like, what can kids who've been given a detention do? You know, from the Abrahamic religion, it's as if it's a classroom got detention, you know. And really, it's just glorification. So once there is subject worship, the idea worship, then what happens is that the language wars begin. And the language wars is how insecure minds are trying to secure their subjective existence by imposing it on forcefully. That would literally mean like a dictator coming and telling like the people of a whole nation what to think. You know, it's kind of chaotic when you look at it, you know. So anyways, I'm saying that we are not language, we are beyond it. Language is a simulation. I call it the linguistic simulation. We are living inside a world, and if it wasn't a world inside a world, there would be no reason. Literally, we could not reason. We would not be separate. There would be no there would be no discrimination. Duality is judgment. Anytime you have a spectrum or hierarchy, it automatically comes with judgment. Whether it's a company, whether it's a kingdom, whether it's a ideological system, the moment there's levels to things, there's discrimination. Now the issue is, if there were no levels, there would still be discrimination. And we're in this strange situation where really we can't have an opinion on freedom, because that opinion would suddenly give a shape to it. So human beings are wondering about unconditional freedom. And this is why the idea of moksha, nirvana, samadhi, sorry, not samadhi, I mean, you can't say, moksha, nirvana, there's so many other words, I don't know why I can't remember. But anyways, it's enlightenment. You're wondering why the light in your eyes is being you. What greater question is there to ask? What greater question can you ask? In an information age, I am not convinced is like, that statement is like a torch pushing away the beasts. Pushing away the beasts. If everything is geometry, if we are part of everything, we are also geometric. If the whole existence and experience of existence has a geometric interpretation of it, that means literally movement is geometry in motion. I often speak about an advanced civilization. I feel when people realize their geometry, it's a sort of immortality for the ego. That means it doesn't matter if you have an ego or no more, and the ego doesn't care if it is there or not, in the sense that because there is no destination anymore. You see, it's like this. We're sitting here, philosophers, so many philosophers have opened their eyes in this world, and they're like, what is this? What is this we're looking at? And I will tell you, silence is the last staircase, last step of the staircase to paradise. That is ultimate renunciation. All those people you see who are renouncing, they're like, you see a lot of monks, for example, who they renounce their ways of life and they're living in a certain structured kind of labyrinth of ethics, you know, in their own labyrinth of ethics. They're kind of trying to walk in those hallways, you know. And I will tell you, if they had actually been honest, they would notice how are they not free. That's the suffering of seeking freedom. The mule can search for the carrot in front of it connected to a stick, and it can chase it for eons. Paradise, oh my god, best, the greatest, you know, the person's just chasing, until the mule actually sits on the ground, the carrot falls on a dimension where it doesn't move, and you fall into a dimension where you don't move, and then you experience. Then the mule can move toward it. So I would say it is literally an angular inner realm shift where if you saw the truth as the carrot and the person as the mule, literally we have to go into stillness, silence, the non-dual, and in the non-dual you perceive it, you have access to it. And once the carrot, I wanted to say once the carrot has eaten the mule, once the mule has eaten the carrot, there's no longer a need for a carrot. Once you remember or ask yourself where Earth was built, you will see no one has left heaven. Earth is in the heavens, politically and theologically. Anyways, this attention is us. Every person is their own space of being. How you move in it sets its rhythms. You can access rhythms before you move. That's called conscious living. You can move before you notice any rhythm, and that's unconscious living. You know? And I'm saying if our species ever wanted to wonder about a sort of multidimensional way of living, because something I find where I feel the next phase of culture would be global culture, is that from the influence of religious thought, that man is not allowed to wonder about the multidimensional because it's the will of the source, and from the secular, I would say, view, where there is no multidimensionality for the persona, and it has been nullified. So one view, they are saying you can't know because you're nothing, and the other view is saying nobody can know because everybody's nothing. So both systems, every system I see so far is actually pointing to nothing, because something means it has to have continuity to an additional dimension, therefore multidimensional. So we are multidimensional beings. Our language is made, we are the gods of our language. We are the ones who created them. We created the words that now we feel we are limited by. The next cultural shift will be multidimensional. Both the religious and religious thought, the idea of experiencing yourself as a soul is pushed aside, and in secular thought, the unknown attributeless viewer is denied to have a position. So what that means is we are left, and you can say it, the best justification, it's like, why are you perceiving things multidimensionally? Because it's the best strategy for continuity regardless. But I also perceive that it's also the validity of the nature of the realm, because it's singularity and multidimensionality, they're like night and day. You can't understand them. You can't understand something singular if you don't have a reference point, a psychological experience of the multidimensional. That means I can't claim right now I am 100% a material being. Why? Because before the claim there is unknown. That means it's like when there is something you can't see, you put the pen down. The pen of certainty is put down. And then you pick up the pen of uncertainty that waits to see the world move, then it moves. I think it's a good question to wonder, why do we have minds? Why does the universe need minds? And where do we see minds continue? That means when I look at the elemental realm, it's just silent stuff. We are literally in a living room, a cosmic living room. We are living in a room. Now this room behind our eyes can vary, can change. It's like literally you can say a person looking at a picture, closing their eyes, and then in their inner realms perceiving a picture, that has like Photoshop adjustments to it. There's literally like a copy-paste thing going on. The moment the person closes their eyes, even if a person closes their eyes, guys, by the way, they still can see outside. Let me tell you how. Because there is all the other senses that have to have a sort of response made to them. That means if you were to close your eyes, you could still visualize what's beside you, what's in front of you. Because as you've maneuvered in the space consciously, when you go into an unconscious state, that consciousness of that state remains. Anytime you go back to that resonance, you wake up in that consciousness. So what does that mean? That means Tesla was onto something. The world, the dimensions of the realm are like chords, like music. And I will tell you that it's like there's a sort of you can still see because there is memory, simply said. Memory and reprocessing, instant reprocessing. And a person may think they look at something and close their eyes and it's like, oh, the picture went away. But I'm telling you, if you just wait 10 minutes, that picture will come back. You will actually see your environment, eyes closed. And it's not that you're seeing it, it's like all the memories accessible before you close your eyes are being reimpositioned into what could be. I would say there's a potential, uh, the mind is potential energy. And everything the eyes are recording like a camera. Maybe we're left with the idea that we are the drones, like a drone of the higher dimensions. Our mind is not in the jurisdiction of only the observable universe. There is something about geometry that there was a scene in Lord of the Rings, I think it was the second one, where they were walking past this weird lake where there were people sleeping in the water. And I don't know, I think it was Frodo, he looks at one of the faces and suddenly he gets pulled into the water and it's like, it was an illusion or something, you know? I would say being unconscious, if you desire the unknown, you shouldn't play with the inner realms. If you have really, let's say, looked at the outer realms and have found a sort of ultimate contentment with your outer realm, then it becomes easy to consider the inner realms without coming back to where there's a problem, you know? Contentment is the ultimate. It's one of those things that is like the phoenix flying in the night sky over a village that doesn't have enough firewood, you know? Imagine like a village was like there was a storm coming and there was like an important child born in this village. I'm just going along trying to see if I can extract the story out of this metaphor. Like, pretty much, imagine a giant phoenix hovering above a town to keep the town warm. Again, so many ways the world can move. We can say we are the receiver of even known movements and unknown movements. And everything is unknown until you get to know it. That means there is endless fears ad infinitum. The mind can generate. The mind can generate endless fears. Let's say the person is scared of spiders. Think of how many ways the mind can generate spiders. Let's say the person is afraid of lions. Think of how many ways the mind can generate views of lions. You know, in your inner realms, you can see any color lion you want. You know, the mind, when it is comfortable and trusts the moment, activates. Without trust, the rhythm is inefficiently, like the person is not trusting the surfer is not trusting the surfboard of the moment. We can say, let's say you know how there's this, people say thinking is like this inner dialogue? That means it's like any person who's thinking, it's as if you check it out, your vocal cord is technically moving in a very micro way. So technically, self-speech is thinking. That means being aware of the sound of your own voice as a sort of voice outside of you. What does that mean? That means there's been times I come and listen to my own talks, and that's me, but it's a voice that is not me. It's not the me that's here. You see? It was me once upon a time. I would create a word here and I would call it the mind space. I feel we can put those two words together. They technically are the same. You can say the mind is awareness plus space. Attention is intelligent space. The intelligence of space doesn't have a form, but all forms are changing within it. This changeless presence of attention is it. This simplicity, instantaneity, is where all language is born from. Energy doesn't have an opinion on types of energy. The way nature is designed is it is like a roar. It's as if like I would say for me, the origin of the universe was a lion roaring. And we are the roar of that lion. The echo of something that began with knowing its intelligence. We are feeling the universe is unconscious. But check this out. We look like a child looks at a teddy bear, let's say young child psychology, like the child looks at a teddy bear and the toy or whatever toy, like the toy animates. That animates into a character to the child. So that means the mind looks at inanimate landscape and perceives its own animate requirement in the phenomenon. So we can say the whole universe could be a toy for unknown dimensions, unknown observing dimensions. Let us say there's dimensions that are observable and there's dimensions that are observing, as if like we are an observing dimension compared to an ant, if we were to look at an ant. Language is not here to be followed. It is here to be reborn. In a changing world, if you don't like changing, you'll suffer a lot. Now we have control over this change, which is our whole life. And so the question comes, what is the most important way of moving? I would say the more further back you go in history, the activities of human beings were objective based. That means there was a point where people didn't speak. There was a point where, because people couldn't speak, they couldn't even treat each other as names. I mean, it was just let's say not meaningless activity, unconscious activity. This activity has become conscious and conscious and more conscious and more conscious, and to a point where now we have become even conscious of what's inside the atom. Or even wandering to the depths of theoretically, the 10, 11 dimensions of string theory. To breathe as a simple moment is the ultimate for a complex life, really. You know the difference between the Buddha and the Bodhisattva. The Buddha was looking for self-enlightenment. It's like you for the individual, from the individual, let's say, let's use, these kind of words for it. Let's say from the individual hell, you found the individual heaven. Now, when you find the individual heaven, you notice the collective hell. When you notice the collective hell, now the only thing left, the only act left is literally going towards a collective heaven, which technically means the efficiency of the whole system rather than just the efficiency of an individual in a system. That means we can say there's no such thing as efficient individuals if civilization isn't efficient. That means if your world is failing, what success? What personal success? What personal glory? What personal entitlement? It's like you can give as many medals you want to people on a sinking ship, but better thing is to stop the sinking, if it's possible. And for the human civilization, it's so possible to turn this around. Literally few chess moves. Every person's life, if they just let the world make the first chess moves and they observe their world first, then it just with a few chess moves you will find, I will say, novelty is the greatest spirit guide. The spirit of the new. When it becomes your ally, nothing can touch you. Sometimes I would say, like, there was a scene in Star Wars where one of the Jedis was like, this Jedi, like, I don't know, beats like 12 people, and like one of the bad guys is like, yo, the Force is strong as in this one. The Force is strong as in this one, something like that. So the thing was, it's not. I wondered, what does that statement mean? The Force is strong. Does it mean power? And I realized no. It's as if the Force has decided this human being, it's not its time to end here. So I think it was a pointer to the will of the energetic realm. That means, what if we realize energy has a mind? And let's say in the future, somebody contacts this energetic mind, and we realize from the beginning we could have all been like those elemental mages, you see. Those people controlled elements. It's just that we were only associating with the part of the periodic table that our body is, when everything is stuff, in the objective realm. I don't know, guys. I feel there might have been a better way I could have said that, but anyways. There's so much more to this geometrical movement. I would say, imagine like in Tony Stark, in modern example I could give, like in the Iron Man movie, Tony Stark literally moved his hand and this light hologram adjusted with his fingertip. I would say the inner realms can become that, but with visualizations of geometry or any exposure to any shape. That means anything you see, you can, behind your eyes, re-see. Review. That's a better way. There is an inner review going on. That's the mind. The mind is reviewing. Reviewing. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, there's more. I'm probably going to scan my whole talks one day and find all the talks relevant to geometry. So this is going to be one of them. Let me see what I wrote in the subtitle before I get off. Yeah, it's another type of movement. So you're not just an object, you're a subject. As a subject, this subject is not limited to just being an object. This is the whole point of subjective identity being like a balloon in the void, when it pops, like there's nothing there, as when the body is not there, it's like, what mind, whose mind, you know so the body is required for individualism, but then we're like, what, how does this individualism define itself? And the individualism is defining itself with the probability of being everything it can visualize, literally being it. You're being it in your inner realms. That means if somebody tells you, like, I don't know, visualize a canoe, just, tribal canoe from back in the day, like hovering in the air slowly between tree branches. Like, you can visualize that. The mind can see, but it can't touch what it sees. So we are literally like, the imagination. It's like consciousness is like a kid behind. I remember my childhood, like in Vancouver. We, like, my whole family went to this aquarium, and it was like, just, I remember being behind this giant glass, and there being like, fish just moving around. So, and so I would tell you, that's what it feels like. That glass is separating the person from the reality behind the aquarium glass. And so I would say the subjective realm, the inner realm that I speak about here, the mind's activity, all of that is behind the glass. It's behind the glass where we can see, but we can't touch. And when we try to touch, it's just the body moving. So the best thing we can do is, like, push off all the notes made so far on the table and restart. That means in a world where people are worshipping wheels, maybe it's important for the person to reinvent the wheel, to wonder again of the true story, at least their eyes deserves. Because we are direct experiential beings. That means everything I'm saying falls underneath, is less important than the actual instantaneous experience. You see, being has nothing to fear. It's already being the whole moment. Your being, your moment is energy. Now you're also moving. And when we move, we individualize. So you can say in the inner realms, there is an idea of self moving like a body that's creating that animateness. What does that mean? That means when a person thinks, and thinking, I'm considering such an old, like, it's so old school using that word. But ask yourself, where is your moment beginning? And that is where the search for truth ends, for a truth that's outside, ideological. You see, it's like you want to not just see a surfboard, you want to also know how to ride, the waves of the space-time continuum. And the best archetype for that is, I've found so far, is the pilot. If everybody treats themselves as an unknown mind moving a known body, and we don't worship this idea, we don't think everything is this, we entertain. That means we can say, like, you can say, let's say we have a Mars colony in the future, and then there's been like 200 years have passed of that Mars colony, and then philosophers are being born in that Mars colony where they've never seen Earth. Can you imagine children who are dying to see Earth? That concept is so mind-blowing, you know. And so the thing is that if there was a Mars colony, let's say in this Mars colony, philosophers began, right? And these philosophers were like, are we really living on Mars, or are we living in our own way of what our own limited way we can experience Mars? That means, imagine philosophers will begin wondering, is it truly living in like some capsule colony, do you know? Or does it mean to just, or are we never living, there really? So do you see it's like the philosophical implication can be there? Uh, and eventually it's just how attention moves. An advanced civilization requires advanced human beings. So the more advanced the mindset, the more uh, the future is, excuse my language, getting its shit together, The mystery of the cosmic landscape that evidently was all occurring as neural activity in the brain. Like the fact that we have even a word that's outside is like also like even mysterious, because when I say use the name Mr.Within, it's kind of like wondering where the idea of you is. Right now, whoever's listening, it's like, where is the world? The world is occurring in accordance to the light that the brain receives. So the brain is like the projector. Now the film being played, let's say on a computer, the film is not the projector. The projector can break and nothing can happen to the film. The film is in the computer. And I guess this kind of fits in parallels to this yogic idea that it's like karma is like something where you've borrowed manifestation, and then at the end you are to return it gracefully. That means it's as if it's like the individual lifetime is the courtesy of the universal mind, I would say. And when I say universal mind, you see there are things like when a person moves their hand, that's you moving, that's free will. But when suddenly a tsunami happens, because it is something that surpasses the will of the person, the consequence has to be blamed to the whole system. So a person can't say like the tsunami is the it's not the wrath of God, it's the wrath of the universe, the whole universe, if it was to give an interpretation. So I'm saying that we have to realize, are we caring for the collectivity of the system? Do people care only for their grandchildren, or do they really care for their great 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 grandchildren? You know? Behind our eyes, geometry can be our body. Technically, just the comprehension of all the sciences is in some sense framed through mathematics and geometry. I would say geometry is prior to words the source code of language, because language, words, they are definitions are like images. Every word points to an image. So An image, what is it? Sight is like three-dimensional space, and geometry, outlines, separation by the mere lines of, like right now I'm looking out my window and I'm seeing just all these different leaves on this tree. And really nature's major purpose is to be here, poetically speaking. Geometry is the ultimate language that holds all of knowledge, I will declare this. Geometry is the future. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and notes. And one last thing I will share, I will share a poem from Rumi. He says, I died as a mineral and I became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as an animal and I was man. Why should I fear death? When was I less by dying? I shall die once more, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on. Even from heaven he must move beyond. You know? This kind of notion of, it's not that because we want to continue, it's because we want to see what next, what else is there. You know, it's like we're all living in a film and we are all actors, and we, in some sense, we have control over the script. We have control, as limited control over the script, you know. To the inconceivable we move on, to that which no mind has ever conceived. That is the ultimate honor of the known animal, to wonder about the unknown. Yeah, the center of all knowledge is unknown, and its circumference is unknown. We're just like a radius of our own pride. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Blessings.